o'clock. Start with public comment. Is there any public comment? No. We'll keep it to 3 minutes. Maybe I don't know if you want to have a timer on or
You just know Erwin's trying to.
Yeah, my name is Ross Donald. I live at 25H Chambers Street. And I attended the Zoom meeting last time. And I couldn't make out anything that Joe, what's his name? Zimbone, Mr. Zimbone. Rick. Okay.
Yeah.
Couldn't make out anything he was saying. The audio was so down, it was muffled, so just a comment, it's nice to have the technology, but it's better if it works, and you've had 3 or 4 meetings. At every meeting, I've brought up the matter of information, and the reason I'm bringing that up is because I'm not getting a response from the housing authority for the information I'm requesting. Right now we have a meeting tomorrow night, the housing authority, a special meeting. The procedures used to be that the chair and the executive director, 10 days before the meeting, would prepare an agenda. And then it would go around and be reviewed, not discussed by the board. But here it is, a day before the meeting, and I haven't received a copy of the packet. Has that gone out? Reg, has that gone out? Doesn't know. Okay.
we don't normally.
Yeah, okay, you're right. Yeah. But I'm trying to get a response. I email him. He attends the meetings. I bring up the issue and he doesn't do anything about it. Not that he has to. It's not his job. It's the executive director's job, I guess, to do that. But she's not doing it. So I don't know what to do. It's like hopeless, So I'm working on it. The nice thing is you've got a terrific staff. They're wonderful. They sort of chill me out because I can't be angry with them because they're doing a job. They're middle managers. It's not their fault. If the executive director doesn't choose to meet with me, then there's nothing that they can do about it. But this is in your analysis. And I get the feeling that a few people here, they feel that it's their function to be a cheerleader. When they go through this little exercise of reviewing things, they're supposed to end up in a position where you just rubber stamp everything, just go ahead and we'll cheer forward. And I talk to people. I'm running for town meeting. I was a member for 2 terms and kind of gave it up, but I think it's important that I be there. I do happen to think that, local government is the greatest show on earth, and we're doing the real work of trying to get along with each other in a political world. And I requested a copy of the plans. Reggie brings the plans out and shows them off at a meeting and says, people, if you want plans, give a call. I gave a call, no plans, and I have to go to every meeting because every plan at every meeting is different, They don't talk to the Conservation Commission the same way they talk to the planning people, So I have to go to every meeting to find out what's going on. Anyway, thank you for your attention.
Any other public comment on Zoom or, okay. Great. So next, if we can go to the approval of the minutes from January 16th. Have a chance to look at those.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Actually, did you do your roll call?
Oh,
You have to do a roll call.
Rick,
I'm an aye.
Erwin,
Aye.
Rhonda, aye. Avery, aye. Katie,
Aye.
and Peter.
Aye.
And myself, I'm an aye. Okay. Peter, you were going to update us on the CPC meeting?
Okay, as part of your meeting packet, you should have received a 1-page memo from the summarizing or the January 24th, 2024 NHA presentation to the Needham Community Preservation Committee. And I think I'm gonna rely on that document, assume that the members of the committee have reviewed that as part of a public record. If anybody has any questions. One thing I'll note is that there are, as part of tonight's packet, you have answers to many, you have a pretty substantial document, which is answers to due diligence questions provided by the Housing Authority. Some of those answers address a couple of the questions, greater detail that were raised that I noted in the final paragraph of my memo. So that's another one I'm really interested in. Any questions?
Okay, wonderful.
Rick has his
Rick
hand.
has-
Oh, Rick,
Yeah, Kathy, if I could ask Peter, could you just take a minute or so to kind of explain the concerns that the CPC consultant had on some of the financing issues? She expressed some concern and then had some follow-up questions. And I'd just like to see if I didn't quite follow it 100%. So if you could take a minute, don't mean to
Okay.
put you on the spot, but
Oh, you are, but that's okay. But I know you don't, that's okay. So now remember, I'm, a layperson here.
that's why I was asking the layperson the question.
Sure. So what the consultant, for those of you in the listening public should understand, is that the CPC has it as a consultant who's familiar with these elaborate financing mechanisms that the housing authority is using in conjunction with its development partner, Cambridge Housing Authority, to construct our new development at Linden Chambers. So her name is Emily Achtenberg. And the question that she raised was she thought that it was a particular challenge in this development scheme to have not just one project, but two projects go before the state, which Executive Office of Livable Communities, Housing and Livable Communities. So she felt that was a particular challenge because these are competitive grants. There's a limited amount of tax credit mechanisms available. And so in order for Linden Chambers to go forward, it's also necessary under the financing scheme for Seabed's Way to go forward as well. Because if you look at the financial, the layer cake, what I call it, there's something like a $6 or plus $1 million grant or loan from the housing authority to through the Seabed's Way redevelopment and repositioning to Linden Chambers in order to provide adequate financing to actually redevelop Linden Chambers. I'm saying this with a high level of self-consciousness because we have two experts here. One, Margaret Moran, is the Cambridge Housing Authority consultant here, and Reg Foster, who's been living with us for many years, is also here. But I think I kind of accurately stated that it's a competitive process, and now you have kind of two projects that are in there competing for a limited amount of funding that's available. I think that the Cambridge Housing Authority expressed optimism. There's a lot of moving parts involved in this. There's a lot of potential funding could potentially happen. And I think that that's basically the response. I think that's it.
Erwin, you had a question?
Yeah, I actually had two, based on what was just said. So let me just follow up on Rick's question. So what's the fallback if only one of the two actually gets funded?
I think that was that's not a question for me necessarily, but we do have, you want to yield and have Rich respond to that?
Or maybe a segue into the next part of the presentation.
Well, yeah, maybe we can hold that for when we get into the presentation.
Okay, could I ask my other question then?
Yeah.
I don't know if it was in the notes of the CPC meeting, but there was an item that said building permit cost, and it was 1.044 million. Was that correct for building permits?
That's an estimate.
That's an estimate based on the size of the project. And I included that, that's an additional slide that's in there because that's another form of relief that the housing authority is going to be looking for. And it's kind of necessary in their financing scheme to put together the financing that they need to develop the project.
Okay, just want to make
There's
sure
another
there wasn't a
element
typo
too.
there.
And there's another element too, which is a pilot program, which would be comparable, basically the same as what's going on and what has been going on since Linden Chambers was originally developed, which was there's no property tax being paid by the housing authority on that property. So those would be two areas that are additional issues that the housing authority is going to be approaching the town on in connection with the development project.
Thank you.
So maybe it makes sense to get right into our presentation from the Needham Housing Authority, and then, you know, some of your additional questions can be answered really by at the source, you know, by the people who really know. Unless,
That's great.
yeah.
Madam Chair, could I just, agenda item number 4.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, that's
That's
fine.
right. Let's do
Just
that.
wanted to have
Actually,
Cecilia walk us through.
yeah, I'm sorry, Cecilia. Let's do that.
Okay, so. I'll move a
There it
little
is.
closer to the microphone. So basically, I just wanted to go through the process for approval of CPA funds through the CPC, and then all the way through when the project recipient actually has a check in hand. So originally what happens at the start is they have to apply for CPA funding through the CPC process. Previously the applications have been due December 1st. This year was the first year that they were due a little earlier, so they were due November 1st. And then they go through the application process where the committee decides if the application is in fact eligible for CPA funding. They answer some due diligence questions which have been passed out to this committee. They go through the presentation process where they present to CPC, they're part of the public hearing. And then the CPC has a vote to recommend funding to town meeting. The article gets put on the town warrant, and then at town meeting, if it's successful, town meeting votes to approve appropriating CPA funds for the project. At that time, the grant recipient will work typically with the town staff, so me in this instance, to sign a CPA grant agreement with the town. That is an agreement that's signed by the grant recipient, town council, our town accountant, and the town manager, to certify that those funds have been appropriated for that specific project. There was a sample agreement attached in the packet for today. And then the CPA funding isn't available until July 1. The grant recipient will work on the project for however long it'll take. For a good example is the Needham Community Farm was a much shorter project. This one is obviously going to be a multi-year project. The grant recipient applies for disbursements from the town, and that's really up to each individual grant recipient as to how they would like to receive that. Some of them will wait until the entire project is done and then do one large request. Others, as in the case of the housing authority, will do incremental requests throughout various months throughout until the project is done. The disbursement request, which blank copy was attached in the packet as well, includes all backup documentation, including invoices, description of the work completed, proof of payment. The monies are received as part of a reimbursement. So it's not, once they're approved, we're not handing, if this project is successful, we're not handing Reg and Cheryl a check for $5.5 million. It is as they spend the money and they prove to us that the money was spent for the appropriate purposes. When we receive a disbursement request, as we have in front of us today, I review it. Or Lauren Spinney, who is the CPC administrative coordinator, she'll also review it, make sure all the paperwork is there, make sure the math adds up, just kind of all of that administrative stuff. And then at that point, once I feel like we have all the documentation necessary, now is when we've added a new step, we'll bring it to this committee for housing projects. If it wasn't a housing project, it would go straight to the town accountant, who would then also verify all the documentation. So again, there's multiple step processes. And then once she reviews it, feels that all the information is there and accurate, we'll get the town manager to sign off on it. And then the request is processed and a check is sent to the recipient. So it's a very long.
Thanks.
Do we have questions? questions?
So I have a question. So are we an interim step, between, the final step, which is to have the town accountant review it?
Yeah, so it'll go, I'll make sure that there's stuff there, so if there's any like small issues, or if I'm missing documentation, it's not coming to this committee first, it's really going back to the project, and then coming to this committee, and then going to.
And then is there, if I may, Madam Chair, is there, somebody who, for lack of a better term, somebody fly specking the detailed, timesheets and entries on these bills, or are we just looking at it in a generalized way? Because I know I'm not fly specking.
We are, yeah,
You are.
yeah.
I think that's my questions.
And are you looking at deliverables, or are you just looking at timesheets?
I'm just looking at the invoice itself, and to make sure that I'm not verifying that the work that they're saying is done is in fact done. I'm assuming that they're not paying an invoice for work that hasn't been completed.
Rick, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you. My question, I sent it along to Cecilia earlier. But one of my questions is, for example, let's use the expenditures for Article 30. This is an example on the 2019 town meeting. There was, at the time, if my memory serves me, that was a $300,000 cost contract, of which the CPA was going to be contributing 150,000, and the NHA was going to be contributing 150,000. And on the backup documentation, I didn't see any differentiation between the two, and whether in fact the NHA was on an equal footing with the CPA money that the town was spending. Do we have some type of a report or information that helps us in confirming that's being done properly?
So I don't have a running report. I can work on putting something together, but each individual request, what we've looked at is the total amount of invoices that have been submitted. And then the disbursement request has always been for half of the amount of invoices that were submitted. And that's kind of how I've been double checking it, but I can put together that summary if that's helpful.
Okay. All right. And with the number of projects, the other part of that second half of that question was the number of projects that we have going on. I think there's 4 now. There was 4 different warrant articles. And it looks like when the invoices come in from Cambridge, somebody has to go through it and determine which project these expenditures belong. They're not necessarily all involved. In some cases, they may not be involved in the project that we're looking at all, because I guess the housing authority might have given Cambridge just a blanket authorization for $1.5 million. And so how do we differentiate and make sure that, for lack of a better term, the money's being charged, this is an accounting, the money's being charged in the right bucket, and it's being, monitored to make sure that we don't have overlap in one project to another?
So I know on the, what is it, from May 2019, the Article 30 request, that invoice, which the disbursement request for number 7 has been withdrawn, but I think it's a good example of, there were multiple different lines for different projects in the invoice that was part of the backup. Most of them were labeled with like Linden Chambers, Seabeds Cook, so it was a little bit clearer, but when it was unclear, I did reach out to Cheryl and we had a conversation to identify exactly what line items were being accounted for in the disbursement versus which ones I could ignore.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that that's part of the process, the review process, as we're going through it. I think,
Yeah.
Given the complexity of this and the multitude of warrant articles we have, and the CPC is contemplating another one, I think that, I just want to make sure that and I'm sure you guys are doing it, but I just, for my benefit at least, understand the process.
Yeah, no, and I can make sure to add in those notes when I forward along the request information. I think that would be helpful, so you guys know all the information that I know.
Super, thank you.
Other questions? Mrs. Delia? Okay, thank you.
I may just have a particular question about like one of the requests, but I figured we'll deal with
Okay,
that.
Yeah.
We'll do that, yeah, that's coming up on our agenda. Okay, so we can move on
Great,
to
well,
the MHA
Thank you
presentation.
so much. May I invite our colleagues to come up here, Margaret and. Yeah, we should sit together in case we have to hold hands. While they're getting set up, I'm gonna answer some of the questions that already came up before we forget what they are. I tried to note them down. And I have my expert helpers here to make sure I get it right. The first question was about Emily Ackenberg's observation that we were putting in for two major project funding requests in the same funding cycle, starting submitting in fall 2024 and hopefully be succeeding in the spring of 2025. That is true. And that is very hard to do. And there is a shortage of money. And there's a lot of worthy projects out there. And that was the answer, not that we're feeling lucky or, we're optimistic, I think is what Peter said. But on the other hand, the expertise that Margaret brings to the table says that things can change very quickly. And new sources of funding can come around. The governor has a $4 billion affordable housing bill that has more tax credit funding in it, among many other priorities. And we need to all support that. We're all going to a thing at, in a couple weeks where they're doing a roadshow on it. The governor's coming and all that sort of thing. And so the real answer is we have to be shovel ready. When another 50 million or 500 million shows up, the projects that are ready to submit the next day are the ones that get first in line. And so that's what we're driving toward. Did I get that wrong?
No, you got it mostly right. I would just say there's also a big distinction between the two. The Seabed's Captain Robert Cook is really relying on federal tax credits as its primary source. It doesn't need to lean into any of the other kind of soft money that the state typically provides new construction, where Linden and Chambers not only needs the tax credits, but it needs the whole alphabet soup of funding. So when we were here last, I think we presented a list of like 14 different funding sources for Seabeds, for Captain Robert, for Linden, sorry, I went through the list, for Linden and for the Linden property. The Captain Robert Cook property will have just really three to four line sources. So, but two very different projects. We wouldn't put them forward together if we didn't think there was a chance for them both to go. And as Reg said, he's absolutely right. You've got to be shovel ready. And they're two distinctive projects, but the state's going to be interested in funding one because it gets them federal resources that aren't readily available for the second one, which is Linden.
However, to address the spirit of the question, what is our fallback? If that doesn't happen, it is not uncommon to not make it in the first round. And the fallback is we'll have to wait another year, and we'll still be shovel ready, and maybe more money will show up, or maybe we'll just move to the top of the queue. And the cost of the project will be 4 or 5% more, so we're going to have to raise more money because the construction costs are going up. But we're still got to do all the work we're doing right now. So the fallback is wait a year.
I view that as some optimism, that's all.
Yeah.
Mischaracterized.
All right. The other thing, we keep getting good smoke signals from EOHLC. So one came into Margaret and me and Cheryl over the weekend, and I'm just going to read the transmittal email. There's a key approval we need from HLC that reduces our cost on the Linden Chambers project by 30%. It's an exception to the procurement regulations that you can get. And it says, thank you for your letter, Reg. Thank you from Ben Stone. This is who is in charge. What is this? Director of the Division of Public Housing and acting director of the Division of Rental Assistance. So the guy in charge of this, all this. And thank you, Reg. Thank you for your letter. We find that the conveyance request meets the requirements of Chapter 268 of the Acts of 2022 for a procurement exemption. Please see the signed conditional approval letter as well as a template for a contract we have to sign and get back to them, yada, yada. Need to fill in the blanks, yada, yada. Please let you know if you have any questions, yada, yada. And then he ends, while we were not able to invite Needham to apply for the PHI 2024 round, which would have been going on right now, it was for almost 15 or 16 million dollars. Back then, we were turned down at the beginning of January, but encouraged to apply again next year. We have our zoning, we have our CPA funds, hopefully approved by town meeting. We have our site plan review, hopefully approved by the planning board. So, you know, while we weren't able to invite Needham to apply for PHI 24, we are excited about this project and expect that with several months more progress, you will be in a good position to apply for next year's funding round. Ben Stone, and he knows about he knows that we have to do two, because the reason we're doing two, normally you would not do that. Two big projects, Little Housing Authority, how does this make sense? And the answer is, by doing the Seabeds Cook project and repositioning it, it frees up 60 units of annual subsidy for operation that can be transferred over, make the Linden Chambers numbers work. And it also frees up enough cash flow that we don't need for Seabeds and Cook, so that we can actually transfer that over to do more financing on the Linden Chambers and barely make the $83 million nut that we have to make in order to make that project go. So that's why we're doing two at the same time. So
I have a question, so, yeah.
Yep.
So have you already built the procurement exemption in your projected financing?
yes.
Yeah, right. So the 30% discount is already baked into the 84
Because
million.
it's basically, if you do it right, it's available to
Right.
you.
I just
Yeah.
want to make,
Yeah.
I don't want
No change.
anyone to walk
Yeah.
out of here and think that it's
No.
30% less than 84
No,
million.
it's
Thank you.
already,
not.
it's already built into the numbers.
All right, so
Yeah,
the next questions,
Just what, can you explain what it is that you're exempt from? It's given a 30%.
Margaret.
Sure, so the way public procurement works in Massachusetts, you have to usually do for construction a two-step process. Where for certain trade categories like roofing, metal windows, electrical, HVAC, you have to go and solicit bids specifically from those subcontractors. And then you get those bids and then you go out for the balance of the work. And in that process, it creates an inefficiency, also creates kind of a dissonance that the parties aren't necessarily all working with the same goals and objectives. And so it results in both the subcontractors and the general contractors putting in extra contingencies against each other from, you know, missing a scope of work or saying, no, that's not my scope of work, it's your scope of work. And so it results in, I believe, in the facts have been researched and proven out, an inefficiency and an increase in project costs. And so I know HLC did their own study. I personally have done a study on it as well and have found the cost differential between projects that use that two-step projects and other projects that do a form of open and fair competition, but not that two-step project. The cost differential can be anywhere between 25 and 30%. And so we've been, you know, within the industry probably for over a decade or so looking for that relief. It does not relieve the project from paying prevailing wages. So, you know, we still are above average in terms of project costs because we're paying particularly close to or at the union rate. So we're only getting relief from that two-step project process, but we are still paying a prevailing wage. Otherwise, the savings would probably double the 30%.
And again, to restate what Peter said, the numbers that you have been presenting had assumed
Correct.
this successful.
And HLC in particular really does not want to see a project that's not taking advantage of that. They've made that very clear. You know, that they passed and supported this legislation in the hopes of bringing down the costs. And again, we're all fighting for very limited resources, hoping to be more from the governor's bill. But you know, you really, it's a finite pot, and so this was meant to allow the resources to expand to cover a broader number of projects.
Rhonda? Guys, I don't quite understand, Margaret, how does the, when you say the subsidies from Robert Cook go over to the other project, and then some operating expenses or operating income is gonna benefit. Can you just?
Sure, so that,
Sounds
this is-
very confusing.
no, it is, and it's like public housing inside baseball is probably the best way to put it. Where, though it's Super Bowl week, so maybe it's in football. So it all relates to Fair Cloth Authority. So every housing authority in the country has a certain amount of Fair Cloth Authority, which is the maximum amount of public housing units that they can have and receive operating subsidy for
From the feds.
from the federal government. And so Needham's share is 136 total, and that includes the 60 units up at High Rock Homes that are federal public housing, plus the balance at Seabeds and at Captain Robert Cook. As part of the repositioning, one of the options that the Housing Authority selected was one that allows the transition of the existing federal public housing units at Seabeds and Captain Robert Cook to the federal public housing voucher program, but maintains the Housing Authority's rights to the Fair Cloth units. So not every federal repositioning is the same. So there are two basic ones. One is RAD, and if you do RAD, it's a subtraction. If you transfer one unit from public housing to RAD, your Fair Cloth number goes down. The other process is a Section 18 disposition demolition process, where if you make that same unit transfer, you actually maintain your Fair Cloth. You don't get paid until you attach that Fair Cloth to a new unit, but you maintain the right to develop that unit. And so the concept that we've done in Cambridge and the concept we brought to Needham was the idea of doing some Section 18 conversion at Seabeds and Captain Robert Cook. So you would maintain some of that Fair Cloth Authority and bring it over to provide the underlying operating subsidy to the Linden project. And so that's where the 60 units that Reg talks about. The other way that we're using Seabeds and Captain Robert Cook to help Linden is just in the overall transaction of the project. It's called an acquisition and rehab. So the Housing Authority will be able to pull a little bit of cash out of that transaction, and then be able to bring it up to the Housing Authority level, and then lend it down to the Linden Chambers level. And so that, so it's benefiting the project in two ways.
And other benefits are that it enables us to keep all 136 units that we will be building deeply affordable, because we can transfer those 60 subsidy units over. Otherwise, you can't. You got to have some market rate units in order to make the operating numbers work.
So I'm almost following, but that's close enough for me. But how do you subsidize the Robert Cook one?
This federal government HUD gives you tenant protection vouchers that then the Housing Authority project bases into those units. So those units stay deeply affordable, and then it frees up the Fair Cloth to then bring it to make additional.
And the reason why it's called repositioning is we're going from the old federal housing program that's been around forever, that pays starvation, operating, and capital.
Better than a fake.
No, I can't say this. That pays, it has formula for calculation. And we're moving over to Section 8 vouchers, which is basically a whole market rate-based program. So every time the average rents goes up, the fair market value rents every year, we get an increase, just like a private landlord does. And so it actually results in about $1 million more per year for Seabeds and Cook than we are now receiving from the old program. And this is a good segue.
So, all right, so at Seabeds Cook, those are the equivalent of Section 8 vouchers that are kind of market rate.
Yeah, but prior,
Analogous to it.
right,
yes.
Analogous, and the Fair Cloth are skinny vouchers.
skinny vouchers is what I call
Right.
it. Full vouchers, skinny
Now,
vouchers.
this is a great segue, and I didn't.
There's, yeah, we have a couple.
Yeah, I will do so.
Erwin?
Thank you. I just want to ask one more question about the answer on the fallback. I understand that you're talking about probably escalation costs in delaying a project. Is there a way to just quantify that or quantify a range of what that might be under the scenario that one project gets delayed 1 year?
I can practice my answer on that, and Margaret can correct it if I get it wrong. So about $65 million of the project is actually direct construction costs. And, you know, if you can tell me in the future whether inflation is going to be 10% or 1%, then I can do a pretty good job of estimating. But right now, it seems to be in the 3 or 4% range, and, you know, in terms of the best you can do. So you do 4%, if the whole thing shifts, you do 4% of 65 million, you know, and you get $2.5 million, you know, that's, but you can't, you know, the range could be just in the last 3 years, it's ranged from 2% to 10, you're getting close to 10% here, so we'll see.
And I wish I could say that construction pricing is the only thing you have to worry about. You also have to be paying attention to interest, what's happening to the interest rate environment. So you may end up seeing a little bit more of an increase in construction costs, but interest rates might be lower, in which case then the project still
It offset.
easily pencils out because they offset. Or, you know, the rent that you're counting on for today in 2024 dollars, you know, now become 2026 rents, and they've gone up over the course of 2 years by, you know, this past year rents were increased by either 6.6 or 6.9%. Was what happened with the project-based Section 8 rents this year. So that can fix a lot of things as well. So, you know, if a project's delayed, we're constantly not only looking at, you know, kind of what the impact is to the various different line items, you know, construction and probably construction loan interest costs, but then also looking at what's happening to the sources as well, with the goal of being ready to go, when that shovel, when the notice comes that funding's available, so that we stay shovel ready.
And so if one has a lucky rabbit's foot to rub, you rub it as hard as you can until the fur comes off, hoping that interest rate trend is currently in the last year going the right way. And the construction cost trend, which has currently been going the right way, which is down from an inflation point of view, keeps going that way, and something doesn't disrupt that.
Yeah. And I've had a project over the last couple of years. So when I benchmark it as of last summer, it had gone up $12 million in costs because of interest rates alone. And we were able to figure out strategies to cover that added cost through, you know, a number of different kind of tweaks to kind of the rent and to adjustments and other line items to try to balance it out. So, you know, never lose hope.
So there are a couple more questions, but I'm gonna use this as a segue. I brought deliverables here, and the very first deliverable, which weighs in at 40 pages, is what we spent the first year and a half doing with the Cambridge Housing Authority, which is called Federal Public Housing Conversion Assessment, which basically analyzed all our numbers, the conditions of our units and everything else. And this explains it more than everything you would ever want to know about your question, if you're interested. And it's basically inside baseball, I think, to use that term, applied to the Housing Authority that allows us to find the money to do these two projects.
And I would say not only did we do the report, but we also had a number of training sessions with the board.
Yeah, 4.
In terms of being able to make sure that as the report was coming along, that they had kind of the background information and knowledge to be able to receive and understand.
Early February, a year ago, we took it started off with 4 options. We whittled them down to 2 in January of 2023 and whittled them down to the one we're on now. And for which we've submitted applications, which generates the most cash that can be transferred over to Linden Chambers. Now, the questions also were about the permit fee, million. Yep, I guess it really is that. The pilot, it's actually no pilot, no payment in lieu of taxes. Those are not something we're going to seek from the town. We already have a letter into the select board formally seeking that. We also were seeking no restriction to just elderly. The zoning, you know, the old zoning restricted it just to elderly, no disabled and so forth. And we made the case to both the select board and the planning board over the course of several more presentations, why it was to all of our advantage to not do it going forward. One of the most important of which is that that's what HLC is looking for. You know, they kind of frowning on the suburbs that try to have those sort of zoning restrictions, and we just didn't want to have that be points against us when we get evaluated. We're also have been talking to the planning board and the select board since December about zoning warrant articles, 2 of them, and that's now been completely negotiated and accepted by both boards. And also an accompanying non-zoning warrant article, which will clean up all the defects and twisted things that we found in the, mistakes that we found in the title research that we've done. So that's all behind us at this point.
Right, I have a question.
So the zoning has changed, but does that mean you're going for more family units?
No.
Okay.
No, but we're not restricting that area. It may have an interplay with what's going on with home and the MBTA community zoning. So we've just recently received informal, smoke signals on how the home process has been unfolded in parallel, where it might be convenient to include the Linden Chambers 11 acres as part of the zone around the home zone around the junction. That no decision's been made that way, but it gives them an option of more flexibility. Whereas if you had a restriction to just elderly, they wouldn't qualify. So we've been working very closely behind the scenes with staff and other committees to try to make sure this is optimized. I won't address, I think we got fly specking addressed pretty well. Rick's question about 50/50, making sure that, the old grant was actually only reimbursing for 50/50. Besides what Cecilia does heroically behind the scenes for the town, working for Dave, because we do have 4 grants. We have a master reconciliation spreadsheet that Cheryl keeps that basically takes every invoice that goes in, and then several sets of eyeballs look at it to make sure that you charge it to not just one of 4 funding sources from the town, 4 CPA grants, but we also have the ARPA grant from the state, that's number 5. We have our HUD Capital Fund grant that we can use for some of this, and then we can also have, we can use some of our development reserves left over from the High Rock Homes development in 2005. So there's actually 7 different funding sources that we are juggling behind the scenes, trying to make sure that we are, we correctly submit the stuff, not only to the funding disbursement request to the town, but also these other funding sources. You can back it up and everything puts and ticks and reconciles there. So it's very complicated. I agree with what Rick said. It's complicated. That's all the questions, I think.
Rick, you have a question?
I was muted. Just to follow up on what Reg was just talking about, it might save Cecilia a lot of work if she's not already receiving that type of report, that she could, get a copy of that and use that as part of her analysis when she goes to sign off on the disbursements.
I think there's merit to that. I think that also she keeps reconciliation reports as well. And so starting at a meeting that Katie hosted over the Christmas break, we were sharing our reports with each other, whether we, so it doesn't hurt anything to have everybody sort of looking at it maybe different ways from the town's point of view, but making sure that all the numbers tie together. So that's a good suggestion, Rick.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, time check.
Your slide deck?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we covered some of the things that we might have gone over in the slide deck anyway. So we look at the agenda, next page on this, and I'm going to jump up and point at things if I need to here. After talking, with Katie and talking with others, we intuited that this presentation is going to be about, everybody just starting with the grants we've received to date from the town. What major deliverables have we received from that? Have we gotten good quality deliverables? Have they been professionally done? Are they worth paying a lot of money for? And sort of addressing that, and then talking next about the reimbursement request strategy. We've had several formal and informal requests to see if we can hit up to charge as much as possible to the ARPA 1.25 million grant as we can first before we go to the town funds second. And so that triggered a bunch of things we did behind the scenes whenever that first came up, November, December, January with EOHLC. And that can be done. So that we were waiting to submit stuff until we had confirmation from EOHLC. I'll get into more details on that in a minute. And then we will then go to just sort of, here's one page tells it all of the invoices for each one of the major vendor areas that we have here. And then end with, if we have time, with just a review of the major milestones that we've achieved to date and what we have to look ahead over the next year or two. So we'll go to the next one. This is a summary of the 4 grants. I think we all know what they are and what they're for, so I'm not going to go through them. And major deliverables to date, I've already talked about what we started here. I'm not printed this thing out, but it's in the box repository. We then went to a RFP process with BH&A to hire the team that's working on Linden Chambers. That's started in the summer of 2022 and concluded by the end of the year of 2022 with the hiring of BH&A, and that they kicked off the project in January of 2029. So BH&A has delivered a conceptual design, which is this 200-page document. Let me turn off my iPhone here. Airplane, there. So the conceptual design was delivered by June of 2023. We had numerous meetings with Conservation Commission, 2 with the Planning Board, the Health Department, many with neighbors, couple with neighbors, couple with residents, so forth. And that produced the conceptual design. So this is a set of plans for the conceptual design, about 30 pages or so here. And it also in here delivered environmental evaluation, geotech evaluations all attached here. The hazmat report, market study. Here's the market study. This is only, this one here is 140 pages. You have to do this basically to prove that you have a demand for affordable housing. If you don't do it, you can't get the money. You know, it's sort of unobvious. We obviously know the answer to that, but you have to be able to prove it with the consultants. We have, I didn't make copies, but we have land surveys, you know, we have title reports, we've got preliminary traffic reports, like, you know, what's going on in the neighborhood, particularly with the drop off and pickup every day at High Rock School. We have a whole wetlands analysis that I didn't print out here. We have the zoning articles that I talked about here. And what we did discover after doing the conceptual and that design is where we also do cost. I didn't print it out, but we, at each stage of the project, we do a professional cost estimate. So based on that, PMC did not this one, but a cost estimate that went with this. And we went, holy moly, that costs a lot more than we thought it was going to do. So it's all summer. We did value engineering. We all know what that is. And then kicked off this schematic design sort of in parallel. And that produced this. This is the schematic design, next level of detail. A copy that, again, I was sort of thinking, preparing here, that we might want to keep a set of master deliverables on file in Dave's office or with Cecilia here. Or maybe we don't want the paper, but maybe, you know, there has been some doubt around for a few months, like what are they doing, you know? And I decided the best way to say is, well, this is what we're doing. We have a roofing plan, we have elevations, we have electrical, you know, at all the schematic design stage. You know, Dave can give this to Hank Half, and say, Hank, what do you think of this? And, you know, he can say, well, looks like a really good job, hopefully, and then you know, this committee or anybody else who asks this committee knows that we've got a lot of value out of the BHA contract. So at the end of the schematic design, we did another cost estimate, and that's where we got the number 63 million bucks for construction. And we succeeded in bringing that down from, it was about 75 million, I think, to 63 here. We also redesigned the building in order to save money. It meant we had to go up a story, which saves money, look smaller footprint. And so that's what we took to the planning board and said, we have now a 4-story, that building is only 2 feet higher than the 3-story building that we were showing you conceptual design. And we went through the whole process of considering that with them, and do they think that's something they want to do? And that process, again, triggered this is one of the 40 presentations we've done in the last year. This one is the Joint Planning Board, Needham Housing Authority Community Engagement meeting we did on December 6th. And we sent out nearly 700 mailer invitations to all the neighbors around. We let all town meeting members know about it through a town meeting member blast, email, tried to get as many people as we could there. It was jointly sponsored by both boards. And we were comfortable collectively that we were on the right track with this design, which isn't to say that it's very unusual to have a 4-story building in a residential neighborhood, but that we've done everything we can to make it possible to set it back and have plantings and landscaping and do what we needed to do to make it as fit in as best as we possibly can. So, and of course, at every stage of this process, this here, and the town already has this, and you know, the Emily Achtenberg has looked at through this. This is the Linden Chambers, financial model pro forma for how do you raise $83 million from various different sources, and how do you spend it here, and then also a P&L that goes along with it, and so that gets done over and over again as we go along each major stage to see if we have a realistic, the achievable, barely approach to raising the money that we need to raise here. So that sort of brings us up to the present, more or less, of the Linden Chambers project. We also asked for $241,000 for seabeds in Cook, and we are not spending on that money on this. We're spending 21.2% of it on the money because of the town council's ruling that the only part of the CPA funding that we received it can only be spent on basically safety things and building envelope things and so forth and so on, due to a ruling that was done in 2013. So we wound up coming up with a budget for the whole pre-development, of which 21.32% was eligible. And we've been basically using 21.2% of the expenses that we've been incurring along the way to offset the cost of that. So that's another form of Rick's question of saying, are we applying the 50-50%? You know, we can only do 21.2%. There's a whole reason why it's only, that way, but we don't have enough time to get into it
You
here.
can just say that it's, as opposed to a knockdown and rebuild, it's a rehab, and so because of this language in
Yeah.
statute, we have to kind of limit.
That's right.
CPC funds.
And it wasn't built with CPA funds in the first place. Whereas High Rock Exchange Estates is a knockdown and rebuild, and therefore we can use 100% of any CPA funding that we happen to get for that in the future for helping out with doing that project if we ever get there. But in the meantime, this here is what's called a existing conditions report or property conditions report. We did some at the beginning of this year, and then we put out another RFP for a architect designer services committee, consultant this summer, and hired them, and they started in the fall of 2023. And first thing they do is they confirm the existing conditions. So you have another 140-page report. You go through 3 or 4 drafts of every one of them. But what's most important, this is the ones I like here better. I mean, this explains everything, why we're doing it, is for Seabed's Way, we have a 3-page detailed spreadsheet identifying line item by line item, every single repair that needs to be made to bring it up to the standards that are needed to be able to get the additional $1 million a year subsidy here and liberate the fair cloth units here. So it's broken out by site, landscaping, utilities, architectural systems, building facades, building systems, plumbing systems, heating, ventilation, air, et cetera. For example, we're putting central HVAC into each building. Right now, they use through the wall sleeve air conditioners in the summer. So we're actually also doing something that is really consistent with what's going with the Climate Action Plan Committee. And so we're kind of keeping them up to date as to what we're up to right now. We're also doing all these cost estimates, to Dave's question, applied a different way, to the new specialized opt-in code, which has increased our costs a bit, but not horribly. But that all changed in the last year. First, 21, we did the stretch code, and then we passed last fall, as we all remember, the opt-in. So these numbers, so basically, based on this analysis, you come up with bottom line of how much is this project going to cost if we're going to fix everything so that nothing needs to be fixed for the next 20 years. Or first, after this is seabeds, and then another 4-page spreadsheet of everything that needs to be fixed. And all these columns are estimates, they're prioritization, is it safe, like health and life and safety fixes, or is it cosmetic or landscaping things, and so forth. So that's what we've been doing over on the Seabeds and Cook side. So that's slide B. Next is our strategy for reimbursement. So for our original 150,000 that we split 50-50 all the costs, basically we've been using that since the start of Cambridge Housing Authority. And basically it's pretty much exhausted here. For the next warrant article that we were awarded 1.386, after analysis of the ARPA grant, it turned out we couldn't charge any invoices against it that were incurred from January 23 to 6/23. We just literally can't submit them to them. They close out the fiscal year, which ended June 30th fiscal 30, and we weren't able to get those in there in time. So what Cecilia has or will have shortly, I see some more folders under Cheryl's pad there, is that 317,000 will be charged to CPA to the 1.386, and starting in starting in fiscal 24 is what that should say, probably a little bit more clear. Starting in July 23, we'll be hitting ARPA for 100% of all the Linden Chambers costs until the 1.25 million is gone. And then in fiscal year
close out at some point, that is there...
So it closes out, it has a sunset on June 2025. Okay, we're pretty sure we'll be used up by then. But yes, it does. And then whenever we use up the 1.25 million, then we'll go back to the 1.386 for the rest of the budget there. So that's the strategy for that one. For the Article 18 from 22 Springtown meeting, that's the 81,978. That was for the existing conditions report at High Rock Estates. That was when we all was determined that only that project was eligible for CPA funding because it's a tear down. And we had originally applied for more money, but then we withdrew those ones for Seabed's Cook and Captain Robert Cook. But we've been paying for this out of our own internal capital funds and and out of the development reserve. So, but going forward, for this one, that report has been done, the final has been delivered. We actually spent more like 87 or 88,000. We overshot it, even though we had a 10% contingency in there. We had to do some extra sewer line testing, and we had to do some extra destructive testing of see what was inside walls and so forth. So we overshot in terms of expenses, but of course we only charged the town the full 81,978 here. And then the 2023 spring town meeting article of 241,052, that's the 21.2% grant, if you will. So that represents, and you can see the detail in previous T-Chalk presentations, that 241,052 represents 21.2% of the overall $1.234 million budget that we expect to spend on pre-development.
Can I just clarify here, because I'm not following this, so is that, what you're saying is that $241,000 is 21.2% of the pre-development
Yes.
cost? And that's the maximum that can come from
CPA.
CPA.
That was a CPA grant that year.
Okay, and that's
241.
specifically then just for CPA.
And it'll become clearer when I get into the details of the BH&A invoices for that year, which we're about to get into.
But that has been spent?
Yes, we are basically not spent the whole amount. We've spent some subset of it.
I know, we'll get into that.
Yeah. So. And that, is for a period of time that goes for another year and a half, of pre-development that we need to do here. So, okay, any questions about that strategy? And that's one of the things we sort of took a detour on and hailed up all our invoices so we could make sure we can make all the moving parts work here. And again, I think as of tomorrow, we'll be caught up with invoicing or sending in disbursement requests to the town. And likewise this week with the ARPA grant.
I just want to clarify something, which is that what you're doing is you're pausing the drawdown on the ARPA grant for some period of time.
No.
Well, they closed out, you couldn't get reimbursement. You're gonna draw down on some $300,000 of the CPC fund grant. And
Let's go
then,
back to the previous slide.
and then go back to ARPA.
Let's go back to the previous slide. There we go. So, everything in fiscal year 23, which ends in 6/23, we tried to get it charged to ARPA and they wouldn't turn us down. Okay. So that's going to the CPA grant.
Right, so the 317,048 is gonna be paid for through the CPA 1.386
Correct.
grant,
Right.
correct?
Then we're pausing
Right.
the CPA and hitting the ARPA until it's used up. And we have a deadline of June 2025. So we definitely don't want to leave any money on the table there. And then, which we can do. We were verifying that we could do that with the EOH-LC people here. And then whenever that period, we use up the last nickel of the CPA grant, the 1.386, then we switch over and pay out the rest of the invoices from disbursement requests from that. So, okay, all right, so we'll go to the next one here. And this is where I'm gonna point. Oops, I'm trying to kill myself here. So this is a snapshot of a summary that we keep in that reconciliation report, where each 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sources of funding. Any invoice that comes in could hit any one of those 7 sources, but of course, can't. There are restrictions that go with each one here. With the NHA Development Reserve sort of as the last, can be used for everything here. And, so it's 4.830 million here. And then again, these are our major vendors here. There's a couple minor ones that I didn't, Cambridge Housing Authority, the BH&A team on Linden Chambers, the BH&ET that started up last fall on Seabeds and Cook, Robert B. Smart, that should be RT Smart, Esquire. And then this is our new special counsel to negotiate our developer agreement with the Cambridge Housing Authority here. And this is, a summary of detailed spreadsheets in the reconciliation spreadsheet here that we keep on what the expenditures are to date with the invoices we've received. And we've received most of the invoices except November, we just got October. I don't think that's in here, but November and December from Cambridge Housing Authority here. Okay, does that summary make sense to everybody? Next slide.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
So the architect is the line, connect to the line item here for the 4.273 million, right? But ultimately, so this is
Ultimately.
this is a portion of that. I know this is part of your negotiation with Cambridge Housing, but so is that line item in the developer fee? Is that money that's gonna ultimately be part of the development fee?
I can't 100% answer that question, but maybe Margaret can help me with that.
Some of our expenses will be considered development expenses and would be in the developer fee, but then some of it would have been expenses incurred prior to the start of any kind of pre-development services, and that would just be kind of leftover developer fee, like developing consulting work, kind of the development fee.
So the amount of, all the pre-development are not in this budget, is that what you're doing?
No, this represents everything. What it doesn't do, it doesn't say of this amount is gonna be going into the developer fee. Like if you were to look at this budget and you say, oh, it has a development fee of X amount of dollars, some of our fee that's showing on this sheet would account to that line item, but some of the early work will be outside of that line
So
item.
it's outside of this budget?
Correct.
And all to be
This presentation is inclusive of everything.
Well, this is pre-development, everything.
Pre-development, everything.
But this isn't, the reconciliation is just make sure we charge the right funding source for the, so there's no connection between this and this top-down pro forma model here at all. In terms of spreadsheet connection is what I'm trying to say. Logical, yes, they're connected.
Rick has his hand up. Rick, you have a question?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I did, just to clarify off this slide, the Klein and Hornig line item there.
Yes.
Does that all come out of the NHA Development Reserve?
No, it comes out of either the ARPA grant first or the 1.3886 second, but probably the ARPA grant because we're going to be hitting them up for everything first, and we should have a developer agreement sometime in the next month or two here.
Okay, and the rationale for incorporating it under the CPA
Because,
grant, or the ARPA grant versus
because
the Development Reserve?
Well, it'll actually probably be split between ARPA and the federal grant, if federal sources like the HUD capital grant, because some of the developer fee, there are actually two developer agreements, one that covers Linden Chambers and one that covers Seabeds and Cook. Does that make sense? Right now, we haven't gotten any invoices, so you're not showing anything there.
But
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was just questioning if your legal consultant on a contract discussion, can that be charged to the CPA?
I believe so. But, you know, we can always re-verify that. We
I
haven't, we
don't
actually
know.
have-
That's why I'm asking the question. So,
Basically, this is, right now, it doesn't look like any of it's gonna be charged to the CPA, because we, you know, we'll be hitting we're coming back to the CPA grant at not sooner than the end of this year or early next year, so it's kind of a moot question at this point, I think.
okay, that's fine. Thank you.
I guess following up on that, Reg, just as an overall strategy, when you have expenses coming in, are you trying to hit the most restrictive grants first? The one, like, if it will fit, for example, if everything fits in the NHA development reserve, but only certain things fit in the HUD
Correct.
or the ARPA, you're gonna
Federal
go
things
for
fit
the
in the
ARPA or the HUD
Exactly,
first.
we
And
did
then,
that, and all of the grants have sunset to them, even our CPA grants have sunset, so the contracts with, the town presently have a sunset of June of 2024.
Mhm.
And one of the things on our to-do list is to ask to, you know, request to extend that. But it's really great advantage of the town, and thank you very much to the town, is they're kind of evergreen. You know, in other words, they with ARPA, we believe, but we haven't verified that June of 2025 is a hard sunset that can't be extended.
Mhm.
So that's, again, the reason why it's to all of our advantage to go against them first. And we were just had to make sure that, you know, they didn't have any problem with us doing that. And it, you know, takes a little time to communicate sometimes with HLC.
Mhm.
And of course, Cheryl's doing all the communicating, and Cheryl also has a day job that she does, you know, running the Needham Housing Authority. So it's quite a juggle, you know, and there's always some crisis du jour, right? And I don't know if you have any comment you want to make, Cheryl? No, okay. Okay, so now I'm gonna walk you through at a summary level. And I understand that Cecilia's been sending you the actual invoices, but they are overwhelming, they're very hard to read, they're hard to interpret, you know, what the heck is this for, and so forth. So in our reconciliation, we simplify everything to the essentials here. And so this is from the Linden Chambers, the BH&A consultant. And I'm starting with one of the easiest ones, you know, because all this thing about the complexity of, do you charge, you know, CHA, you can charge it to any one of the 4 grants. This one is just Linden Chambers. So here's where it shows, but, you know, each month. So invoice number, month of service, what it's for, professional services. Some of them have reimbursed expenses in them, actually, and the total. This is where, from right off the summary strategy I gave you, the first ones that go through June of 2023 are in Cecilia's hand, or will be very shortly. I think those are maybe, I don't know what.
They will be.
They look very short. Okay. And then, yeah, on, you know, outside of anything the town looks over, we're also preparing similar disbursement requests in a different format with different requirements and so forth. And the rest of the year is going to go against the ARPA grant. And that's, you know, that's how we came up with that. And now this, some sharp-eyed person is going to be looking back, say that's not the 313 that was on the strategy page. But of course, CHA is not the only one that's charging the you know, for services during that first half of the year. So patience. So the next one here, another easy one. Robert T.
I'm just
Smart.
gonna go back to the last one.
Yeah.
I'm assuming somebody else is looking at, those are really high reimbursables, just, I'm assuming.
Well,
somebody else-
remember, hey,
somebody else is
okay,
looking at them.
here we go.
No, I'm just.
I'm gonna put them way in. So here's
So
the
you're
traffic study.
spending $25,000 on printing?
No, it has nothing
No,
to do
no,
with
this is the
fronting.
subcontractors are working for BH&A.
No, I know. Oh, reimburse, because they're, okay. So
Right,
the
and-
reimbursables are subcontracted.
Yes.
Very different, okay.
Yeah,
That's
and,
not how I
and
use it.
every reimbursable they incur can't be incurred until it's prior approved by the housing authority, but it would be, you know, there's engineering and consultants that are within their base scope, but then there are a number that fall into the reimbursable category, because not every job needs them, so like a traffic study engineer, something like that.
So
Nothing on
No, I don't
printing.
usually see reimbursables as other, as subcontractors.
if you look in the first page, I'm sorry, maybe it's bad label.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'd like to say, you know, we have,
No, like, I got phone bill.
we have the engineers NV5 is in those numbers.
No, no,
The, yeah.
I
yeah,
understand.
all right,
I
right.
understand. And I also said, it's like, I assume other people are looking at it, just, that's a lot of photocopy.
Yeah, that's a lot of photos.
Yeah, there's no
A
photocopy in there.
lot of FedEx delivery.
Right,
and
right, right.
Printing and press. No, not that. So Robert
No, you
Smart.
can just say that the BHNA contract involves, is a general contract, if you will, with a series of
no.
subcontractors in it.
It's an architecting
An
firm
architecting firm.
that has a whole sub-team
Right.
that does
Reimbursables
wetland
has a
studies.
different context here than what I
Yeah,
usually.
might, probably bad caption there. Legal fees. So, Bob joined our team in March. Bob is very experienced, known to many people. He's a town meeting member. They've done a ton of zoning work, for all kinds of clients here. We're really lucky to get him because he knows everybody and knows how all the, inner systems work. And so he is the reason why we have the zoning warrant articles approved, the non-zoning warrant article approved, negotiated and approved. We also have a lot consolidation plan. He's also found problems in our title reports that we corrected that nobody else spotted, and et cetera, et cetera. And so he's easy again. The first three invoices through June of 2023 go against the CPA grant and everything. Then we're gonna hit the ARPA grant for everything we need until we get through site plan review, which is gonna be in June, July this year, okay? And that's that one. Next one. Next easy one. Okay, this is the Seabeds and Cook, our BHNA team. They started, the kickoff was actually in September, but they actually started with a little bit in August. So these track their invoices here, no reimbursable expenses. They have a similar contract where they will see subcontractors showing up there. And this all goes up against the CPA grant, but this spreadsheet has this record, so it has a formula in it. So they charge us 4710, but only 21.2% get charged here. Now, it's just an allocation, but it produces the same result, and it's much easier to keep track of that way. And this is again is in Cecilia's hands, or will be shortly here. So 41,050 becomes 87,002 that charges the town, and the rest of it goes against our HUD CPAC
Capital Fund Program.
Capital Funding Program, CFP grant here. So questions make sense? Okay, next.
This is the company.
This is the challenge. This is the challenge here, and it's 2 pages. So this is 2021, where we started in July with Cambridge, and worked mostly just on the general strategy, which is that document on the far left of there, that agreement, which then produced the financial reengineering approach that liberated the money that we needed to do Linden and Chambers, and also we were able to renovate and modernize and preserve Seabeds and Cook at the same time. 40 years old buildings need they're not in terrible shape, but you got to make the investment if you want them to last another 40 years.
Rich, can I just ask a simple question? It looks like there's color coding there.
Yes, there is.
Can you walk us
It-
through that?
So, tan is, it goes against the 150,000,
Oh, okay.
and blue goes against the CPA grant.
And the upper grant.
And so forth, and the ARPA grant, and green goes against, these are federal. So you'll see that green is federal property stuff,
Okay.
and blue is Linden Chambers stuff, and tan is general consulting. And then, as you can see, we have the 50% here. So when we get our first $20,000 invoice from CHA, 10,000 goes to Cecilia for disbursement requests, and the other 10,000 meets our obligation to fund half of it out of our development reserve. But basically, Rick's question at the very beginning, which he was correct in his recollection. And you'll see this 50% applied to all of these, so that everything again still foots and ticks in the reconciliation to $422,332.62. So we haven't lost anything or double counted anything like that. And this is what we do behind the scenes to try to keep us from going, our heads exploding, trying to do it with calculators and adding machines here, so.
And similar to BH plus A, we have reimbursable expenses, so CHA is contracted with our procured house doctors, so we've already done all the procurement. And the Union Housing Authority piggybacks on that procurement, and so the items that are in the reimbursable column are those types of expenses.
So over here, we have $153,503.02 of such subcontractor expense, basically. One of the incredibly valuable things that Cambridge brought to us from their 15 or 20 years of doing $1 billion of projects before us is they have a whole stable of subcontractors, like architects and other legal and various others that they've worked with before, companies that can do the property conditions report on an initial basis and so forth. So when we get to a stage of a project where we can use one of those proven subs, and they, because we're doing an intergovernmental agreement between Cambridge and ourselves, one of the things we can do is cooperate together and use their subcontractors without having to put out a procurement. So that has saved us an enormous amount of money just doing procurement steps. Plus we get somebody that we know is a proven, success story with Cambridge, or they wouldn't be on there. They call them house doctors. I'm not quite sure where that term came from, but that's, but when they originally proposed to us and we got 3 proposals for development consultants, they were way out in front. In terms of our scoring them and evaluating them. And one of them is they came with a stable of proven consultants that we didn't have to go through the procurement process to get. So this is all kinds of, they bundle it all up. And it's one of the things they like to do, and bundle them all up and gave us a very gigantic invoice that some of it's here, in this case, is the High Rock, partial payments for the High Rock PSC. And the rest of it is for the Seabeds and Cook thing, which we were going to pay from a CPA grant that we thought we were going to get, but we didn't. So we're having to pay for that ourselves. So next, that's 2022. Now I'm going to 2023. And it's really the same color coding, the same strategy, and so forth and so on. So here, let's just take this reimbursables one. When Cecilia looks at this, this is a trick question, not 12,100 is reimbursable from against our original 2019 grant. And 2 times this number is reimbursable from the Linden Chambers one, and 2022-18 is reimbursable from the High Rock PCR grant. You will see that we've now used up the whole 81,978. So there's some of it had to go over here or over here. And again, it's all broken down in much more detail on the detailed worksheets in the reconciliation work here. And so we, Cheryl, we can tell anybody how we got to these numbers from the invoices that are on file, that are attached to the paper copies of the disbursement requests that we put in here. And so basically, in summary, you'll see that here, this is blue, I don't know, different color on this one here, is Linden Chambers pre-development through June of 2023. We're going to put against the town CPA grant, the 1.386 pays for that, because we can't charge that to ARPA. We want to, but we couldn't get the feds to get the state to go along with it here. But when you afterwards, when you look at blue here, here, that's all going to go in, or it has gone into the ARPA grant to hit that up first. And again, you know, it adds to 753,048.37 here, and you have the same number over here. So what you've done is reconciled the invoices on a line by line basis, on an invoice by invoice basis here, to where we submit the disbursement request to, not just to the 4 CPA grants for the town, but we have to also have the same conversation with EOHLC and then our regular HUD handlers. You know, they want to make sure we charge the right number there. And ultimately, we, you know, when all else fails to that restricted funding question you had, Kathy, before, then we have to pick it out of our development reserve. So we're like in $281,000 into our development reserve of 650,000 or so forth, just through the end of this year, which is why we're so grateful. And I say public thank you to Margaret Moran, who was the development consultant back in 2005, who arranged for that $650,000 when she was working as an independent development consultant. And then when
Just want to, like, we have a question here and a question online.
yeah, and it was still there when we started up 3 years ago.
Actually, my question is for you. I'm sorry, I have a hard stop at 6:30. Is there any way to reconfigure so we can get to the vote before I ruin quorum?
Yeah,
Just a-
I think we've done enough on this.
Using that, we don't.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't realize.
No.
So we're through the numbers part, and the next part is where we change gears and we talk about
Well, maybe we.
We'll still have a quorum, but if you want to vote, I just,
Oh, okay.
otherwise I think we'll still have a quorum if she needs.
no,
to
we can
be.
pause.
Okay.
No, pause. We can pause.
But if you want to take the vote.
I just wanted to.
Yeah,
Okay, I guess question for the group, if you feel ready.
I prefer to go through, I mean, I'm sorry.
No,
I prefer that we have all the data in front of us, because there are gonna be some questions, there could be questions about the particular, disbursement request, so.
Sure.
I don't think,
Yeah,
but my
let me just
opinion,
ask if, no, but let me just ask, does anybody else have a stop, like where they have to leave, where we would have a problem with our quorum? Erwin and Rick, can you stick around?
Yeah, I can do that.
Yes,
Everybody else, because if we do have a problem with the quorum, obviously we've got a problem with. the
Great, I just
quorum.
wanted to make sure that there wouldn't be a problem when I got out of here in 2 minutes, but
Yeah.
yeah, no problem. Sorry to interrupt. Thank you.
No, that was important. Okay, well, we'll keep going then if we are okay on quorum. And Rick, you had a question?
Yeah, I did. I'm sorry, my question related to that last slot, I believe, but just before the meeting tonight, Cecilia sent out a revised update, I guess would be the best way to describe it, saying that there were a couple of the requests for disbursement that were sent out yesterday that are being withdrawn. And I didn't have time to go through what those were and what the reasons were. Maybe it's in the packet. I didn't see it. Maybe someone could just briefly explain what they were for originally and why they're being withdrawn now. And do they relate to any of this stuff here?
You want to do that? Or I can do that. So in preparing this presentation and updating the reconciliation sheet and trying to get everything into Cecilia, we discovered that one of the invoices we submitted last week was for Seabeds and Cook expenses that the town council had explicitly ruled as not eligible for funding from any CPA funds from Needham. And we said, oops, we guess we better, before Cecilia discovers this, which she probably would have anyway, maybe she already did, we better withdraw that. We just can't, it doesn't affect us financially. It was just a mistake in allocation that we made. And that was a moving part that goes back 3 executive directors and 2 project managers from Cambridge, and me is the sort of overall continuity, and I noticed it the last minute. The other one, we looked at and said, oh, we're gonna say tonight, we're gonna charge the ARPA grant for as much as we can, starting in July of 2023. And this one we charged to the CPA grant. We shouldn't do that because we all agree it's in our town, everybody's best interest to, exhaust the ARPA grant first. So we send those two, Cheryl sent those two withdrawal requests this morning. And we're going to move them over to the ARPA side and, still get ourselves paid that way.
Oh, okay, thank you. I just, it came at the last minute, so I was just really curious as to what prompted them, so thank you.
It's really complicated. So it's easy
Well,
to
that's
overlook.
why we have a lot of eyes on the project. you
Yeah.
know?
And remembering about that Chris Heap ruling, actually it was me who sort of said, well, wait a minute, that's gonna not, even if it gets through, it's not right. So, so
It wasn't going to get.
it was gonna get through. And
I had the Chris Heap opinion with me.
yeah, and it wasn't gonna get through, and even if it did, it'd have to be corrected next month, so it doesn't, we figure we better. Again,
All right,
you get
thank
a
you,
sense
guys.
of how complicated this is. So any other questions before I go sort of shift gears here? The next part of the presentation.
Go ahead.
Shift gears, okay. So, I thought it'd be good to just, sort of marry up all this to, major deliverables with major milestones. So, we're here at the red line, everything up here is past, everything beyond down here is future. We're basically, as I reported at the beginning, we have got, approved zoning warrant articles. We have, the CPC working on reviewing the $5.5 million, request. Our team goes into some work that needs to be done that isn't affected one way or the other, called design development. There are two public hearings ahead. One is, these are scheduled and advertised now. On the 27th is the planning board public hearing that you have to have on a zoning article. Any zoning changes, you have to have a public hearing. We've had the community engagement, many public meetings about it, but this is the official one that you have to do to change zoning. And the second one is the CPC, and their normal process is to meet mid-March and have a public hearing, which is required by the CPA law as well. And then the following week, they vote on whether to support our funding request or not. And then hopefully that will go well. And if that's the case, then May 6th, I think, 2024, Monday, May 6th is the first day of Springtown meeting. We don't know whether it'll be on Monday or Wednesday or where the warrant article order is still being in flux right now with the select board. But somewhere in that first week or two of May, then we bring this whole story to town meeting. And hopefully they'll think it really makes sense to do what we're doing, that will bring $83 million or let's call it $77 million of additional funding in to be able to do the project. And go from having 72 small studio apartments that are falling apart to 136 brand new one-bedroom apartments that are there for our own residents, and then also hopefully to fill the very substantial demand that's out there. That was confirmed by the market study, was confirmed by the housing plan, 2022 housing plan, and there's a huge shortage of deeply affordable housing out there. If that goes successfully, then we move into June. At the end of May, we'll do the official filings for the site plan review by the planning board. In June, July, probably more like July, will be the site plan review. Again, the zoning allows us to build by right, subject to a site plan review, because that's what the state is looking for, to even get us into the first funding round here.
Madam Chair, quick question.
Yes.
What guidance has your legal counsel provided to relative to the planning board's ability to approve the project before the Attorney General approves the zoning change. Town meeting is not the last stop for a zoning.
Yes, so that's been the subject of legal discussion. Not only our attorney, but between us and Chris Heath and they think we can, the ruling is that we think the opinion is, not because I understand the issues, that we can legally start the site plan review and complete the site plan review, even if the Attorney General hasn't approved the zoning articles yet. And we could even go through the fall period. Margaret's gonna correct me if I have wrong there, but I think we can even submit the preliminary application and still not have that Attorney General approval. I think we definitely have to have it before we get the final application goes in, which is in the winter of 2025. The other feeling is with the focus on affordable housing and given the nature of the zoning change that we're making and the nature of our community, and how this is sort of the first time we've ever done something like this in Needham, that, the approval could happen fairly promptly because there's not going to be any issues, but that, of course, that's totally speculative. So I think everybody's comfortable with the schedule I'm showing you here. But great question. Yeah, definitely came up. So basically in the summer, we'll start working on construction documents. And, by September 2024 is a plan, to be 50% complete with that. And by November 24 to be 100% complete with that. The preliminary application goes into EOHLC in the fall sometime. We don't have the exact date, but it's usually October-ish. And that works its way through. And then down here, we're going to have prepared the bid documents that would be actually go out to bid. Where's the oh, here's our contractor. This is practice for me for later here. So Margaret, please jump in if I get anything wrong here. We put in the final application for the funding. This is for all the rest of the funding that isn't the 5.5 million that hopefully we have from the town. They have a whole process. They do this. We also start to do a contract pre-qualification process now that we have a complete bid document set and so forth. And we will put out, when do we put out the RFP for the contractor?
I think that's what.
Right there,
showing
this
there,
right here,
but
that's
yeah,
what this is,
yeah.
okay, all right. And then, fingers crossed, we get both projects awarded in the first round, funding. And we've talked about the fallback and so forth here. And then we actually select our our contractors and subs, okay? And we do the financial close in that second quarter of 2025. And construction starts in midsummer. And that's where 6 buildings, BH&A has figured out how to do the first half of the building in just taking down 6 of the total Linden building. So that's 24 tenants. So somewhere in here, we'll start temporary tenant relocation or attrition, so that those buildings can be torn down and that first phase 1 building can be built. Estimated lapse time is 16 months. When construction is complete, then we have an occupiable phase 1 building that has actually 72 units in it. Is that right number? No, it's 60. Yeah, 74. Yeah, 72 and 64. And we move the rest of the Linden Chambers and Linden Street people into their brand new apartments. They don't have to go anywhere else temporarily here. And we have a few left over. And then we raise the other buildings and build the 1B building. And that's pretty much complete in Q4 2027. Those are major milestones. And then for those people who don't, there's some people like charts like this, if you do the next one.
Well, can I, first on that?
Yeah.
Margaret, do you usually do construction documents before you get funding?
If we can, yeah, that way then we're trying to do it while the funding application is being considered, because then we'll be ready to to go and bid so that we can close on the financing as close as after. And some people will actually have their prices. I know, Beacon on their, Leaford Terrace project with Salem had their contractor price before they got the last funding from
Before they got
HLC.
approved?
Yeah.
Wow.
And of course, that is the development partner's decision to do that. Remember, by then, we have a development partner and they will make
Yeah.
that decision.
Like it. Aggressive.
So as I was saying, this last slide, 2 slides, is, some people like Gantt charts and some people like lists of milestones. So this is really the same information presented in Gantt chart form here. This in the next slide. And thank you. Questions?
Additional questions?
Thank you, that was amazing. I have a couple questions, but they're without the.
Nobody will understand them, but maybe you want to take it
No,
offline with Mark.
No, I should, do we anticipate environmental problems? You've got a couple $1 million in there. Is there anything that is?
Nothing that's been flagged yet, but we'll have to, if we haven't, I thought we had already done a phase 1.
Yeah.
If we haven't, we will, and then, that takes you where you need to go, but nothing's been flagged as an issue today. We have a preliminary report and they haven't found anything.
I don't know, because it's like $2 million, like.
Yeah, well, that would be great if it goes away.
Yeah.
Yeah, that includes demolition, and you do have asbestos in the building, so when you're taking a building down, you actually have to remove all the asbestos before you can actually do any knocking down
Oh, yeah, that's that.
and also, that can really drive up. And my last big project, which is the Charles River School, middle school building, we were knocking down a 100-year building. We have this report that says we don't have any problems. They can only see visible problems, okay? They can't see invisible problems. And all of a sudden, the excavator went in, boom, knocked something down. There was asbestos just flying right.
I don't think it's a bad idea to have a contingency. I'm just saying, I didn't know if you had already found something.
Well, it stopped the project for 2 months.
Yeah.
So.
Asbestos can get you.
And that happened to me 15 years ago, and so now we know to actually pull off. Budget for it. Well, not even budget for it, but then to pull off, and it was the waterproofing between the 2 courses of brick that was hot, so now And I learned that one the same way. We're gonna do some destructive testing on a small scale before the excavators go. That's exactly what, we don't wait for it to happen at that point. But you still have to remediate it and delay the project, before you can start it up again.
And just one other quick question, this looks great, but, the clerk, that's a high budget for a clerk for 15 months, it's full time? Well, it's for both A and B.
I only brought 1 copy here, so she asked me for that. Seems to be good.
It's fine,
Yeah, no, it'll be for A and B, so you're talking 16, you're talking 16 months times 2, because you're not doing it sequentially or all at once. I mean, you, in an ideal world, but you don't have relocation resources, so it's not ideal. So you gotta play with the cards that you're dealt with.
Yep.
But the fact that we're only taking 24
so
units
it's a lot
down,
longer period.
it's a much longer construction period, and so that then factors into, the construction administration that you're paying for the architect, but then the public works and all of that.
Okay, thank you.
Rick, you have a question?
Yeah, a real quick one, I hope. This has to do with the financing and the balance sheet on the project. And I remember hearing or reading or seeing somewhere that the Cambridge Housing Authority is going to be the entity on the hook because the Needham Housing Authority doesn't have sufficient assets to back the funding of the project. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Let me jump in on that and say, Rick, we're in the middle of negotiation of the developer agreement, and I'd rather not talk about any of the rumors that you might have heard right now in a public meeting, if that's okay.
Sure, that's fine. At some point, I'd just like to learn a little bit more because there's an integral part of the financing of the project and the risk associated that the town would be having in this situation too.
And I don't think that Rick was saying any words that weren't said in a rapid fire way at the presentation before CPC. That's all. So, but I wouldn't characterize.
Let me give the answer I said to the CPC, if you want to do that, which is I said what I just said, but I also said, Needham Housing Authority is a small housing authority. We don't have big, deep pockets, to provide guarantees that are looked for when, tax credit investors come and want to put tens of millions of dollars down. And so one of the things that we are negotiating is who shares what percentage of the guarantees. So that's the more precise, roughly answer that I gave last time this was asked.
All right, so in relation to that, just as a follow-up then, I don't particularly care about the interrelationship between the housing authorities. All I care about is from the town's perspective. Does that add any additional risk to the town for the money it's put into it or any future funds that it's going to be put into it? And how does that affect the town's investment going forward?
Well, let me say, if I could treat what the town has invested to date, 1.386 million, and the other ones is sort of a sunk cost for the purposes of answering this question, and just focus on the 5.5 million that we have outstanding, that is construction funding. Unless we get to the close with everybody else and making up the 83 million and a stack of legal documents that high to sign, and that's when the town's $5.5 million will be sort of irrevocably, you could say at risk, but I'm going to say irrevocably committed. Now there's any project can blow up or some force majeure thing can come along and screw something up. But assuming that, our development partner has, not assuming, we know, has done 20 projects, $1 billion of projects up before now, the likelihood is that it'll be a successful project. But the town would not be able to disengage its $5.5 million at that, financial close. We wouldn't spend it right then. It still would be drawn down, but it wouldn't, could not be clawed back at that point. Did I get that right?
But to clarify, only after state
Financial
and
close.
federal money is secured.
Yes, and
Our
private
money
investor.
Yeah, all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So risk is decreased once you get permitting, and risk is significantly decreased once you get financing.
Right.
And then the risk is virtually eliminated once you complete construction.
Yeah.
Virtually eliminated.
But not always, not fully eliminated, but that's the the risk period is obviously, until you get the project fully funded and you actually close on the financing, because you can think you have everything fully funded and then banks fail. That's happened to me before. But then the big risk is obviously construction. That something would go sideways and require, a hidden condition that was totally unexpected, that really throws a wrench into the numbers and all of that. But, you hope that you have adequate construction contingency to cover that risk, or adequate contingencies elsewhere in the line item to cover that risk. And so far, in my 25 years of doing this, we've been
Never not gotten it done.
yeah, we've been, we've faced challenges, COVID being a huge challenge, where we had 5 projects going at the same, all at once, including 2 at elderly developments where the contractors were doing gut rehabs in a partially occupied building. And you get reshuffled the deck of the cards you get handed, and it's your response, and we were able to weather that and, put into practice protocols that kept not only the workforce coming into the building safe, but most importantly, our residents. And so that we're able to continue with construction and continue with relocation during some of those really challenging days.
And one other just announcement to close off things on a good note. Those of you with good memories will remember that one of our funding sources is from the HOME program, which is a consortium of 9 communities, including Needham. It's run by the Newton Housing Authority, and it's one of the major sources of block grant funding for housing. And we're meeting tomorrow as a special board meeting to approve our application against the new ARPA slug of money that they got to give away. And we originally estimated last November 29th, when we first saw you, and we repeated it last time, told the CPC that we were going for 700,000, but after we finished. And our good development consultants at Cambridge Housing Authority analyzing what could be done and what would not be the maximum amount we could ask for and not be greedy. We're applying for 2.4 million. That application is going in, deadlines this Friday. That doesn't mean they're gonna give us 2.4 million, but we're gonna, make the case for it. And again, our commitment to the town, not just from the Needham Housing Authority, Cheryl and myself, the board, but also from the Cambridge Housing Authority, either as our consultant or as a development partner, so we can find some other places to get this funded from, we'll definitely do that. Because we have another project ahead with the High Rock Estates project, so if we could somehow obviate the need for the $5.5 million, then it can be revert back to the town and be available for funding we know in the future for High Rock Estates. So we'll try to do that. Another area of big uncertainty is how much money we can get for energy efficiency. That's all still being figured out by our energy consultants. And there's a lot, there's the infrastructure bill out there, there's the Inflation Reduction Act out there. There are lots of programs going at it. Needham is in the leading position, having adopted a specialized stretched-in code. While that might increase our cost by as much as 5% or so, it also puts us right out in the front line of, seeing if we can get some of that cost covered by this money. And, we'll do that as well. But, what you're seeing here, we should say, is a snapshot. You will see at the bottom, the asterisk saying, subject to change on those last few pages here. And, we'll keep the town regularly updated.
Other questions before we move on to the reimbursement request? Okay, well, thank you. I thought that was extremely informative, certainly answered a lot of my questions, and I hope others feel the same way. So I guess if we're ready, we can move on to the reimbursement request. I don't know if Cecilia or Dave is gonna walk us through or how we're going to proceed, or
I guess I can just tell you the paperwork that's in front of you, and that's, and you can come up here to talk questions, but what had been printed on the table for you was just the cover sheet for each disbursement request, so not excluding all of the backup. And then the two documents that Cecilia handed out right at the start of the meeting was this updated summary sheet, which Erwin and you should have by email. And then this list of disbursements with what was withdrawn so that you know what you're actually voting on.
and process wise, would we be voting on each one of these individually?
It's up to you. You could do them as a.
I think we should vote, we can discuss them together and then vote separately. That's what I would.
It would be appropriate to vote each invoice.
Yeah, vote,
Okay.
yeah.
Can we put them up on the screen as well? Is that possible?
Yep. Yeah.
I think I'm gonna ask Carol and Margaret to get some dinner, if that's if everybody.
I do have a private question, because if we have questions on the request, I actually only probably have one, and it's on the first one. But those questions may be directed to the housing authority, but
Yeah, if they weren't here, I would just pass them along.
We'd hold off on taking a vote on that
And
invoice.
then we'll stay.
Stick around.
I only have one question on the first.
Go ahead, ask your question.
Oh, okay, it's actually, this is on request number 8 on Article 30. It's small, it's a very small reimbursable request. But if you could just tell me what Needham, generally speaking, what Needham construction development is. That's the one, that's the time charge for, that totals up this, $13,000 total paying out for something like that. That's the only description we have in all the contracts.
I think you have a copy of what you're looking at.
I don't know, is this number
Yeah,
8?
I'm looking at the backup to the request, where this is
I don't know.
Article 30. Number 8. back up to the request.
And this is online.
It is, it just, there's only one, for all of the time entries, for all of the timekeepers, the description, like, oh, I guess it's a project code is Needham Construction General Development.
Yes, so
Well,
that
what is that?
that is
That's
from
all.
the time period of January 23 to June 23.
That was the
Um,
time code that CHA was using to track Needham hours, but after that, we ended, after a certain period, we ended up dividing it into the three kind of main components of our work, because initially we just had kind of one big task order, which was kind of the PRI and redevelopment, and then, you know, after that, we then tracked for the state activity, federal activity, and then general PRI activity.
Rick, you have a question?
Yeah, I don't know if you folks are seeing it there, but I don't have anything on the screen here.
Sorry, Rick, I'm just trying to find it. It's embedded into a larger packet, so I'm just trying to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
No, I'm just slow at. Are we gonna start with?
Because the first one is withdrawn and the last one is withdrawn, yes?
We should just reference the invoice numbers and such. I mean, that's just the cover sheet, that's not really.
So this is in the packet that you're looking at.
I am. And it's the label, I think the name of the packet is NHA is first thing.
Yeah, everything is just under one code.
And then, but it's page 47 of,
And it should be
Yeah, I have it up.
the
so-
status. So Margaret, what you're saying is this was early in your relationship with us and you had not
Well,
broken
this
out.
this was in 2023, so this one would have had a general, like a general code, that's kind of a general category of general PRI. It's not specific to Linden Chambers, it's not specific to Seabeds and Captain Robert Cook.
So just the work you did for all. of the
Yeah,
projects.
yeah.
so all right, so this includes both seabeds and.
It's everything.
It's everything.
Some of it's high rock estates.
And some of it's higher up. So does it include?
Like The
does it-
general PRI initiative.
So does it, okay, so does that include our the survey that we're not, that survey work that? Didn't we charge?
So we
Should-
thought about
Seabeds-
it.
Seabeds,
We didn't have it broken out. And it's part of the segue into breaking it out the way I described with the 21.2% here. But there's no breakout that's available.
all right, so we don't know on this one, but it's a relatively small number.
And it wouldn't be the survey, because that would be a sub.
Is
Yeah,
that
it's
correct?
not the actual
Margaret?
survey.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is all general, this invoice on the screen is all our staffing costs.
Any given day, we would talk about everything at the same time. There was no breakout on it, you know.
All right. That's I'm satisfied.
Okay,
Relatively small on that one.
should we go each one at a time for now? Is any other questions on this disbursement request number 8? We'll keep going. The next one, I haven't noticed, is this number 1.
Come on, can we vote on this?
Oh, yeah,
We're
let's
done
go with
discussing
it.
on 24.
Yeah. All right, so what should be, we have a motion, how should we do this?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Given that we're not looking at this in detail, we're in general approving the fees. Why wouldn't we just vote once for all of the disbursements? I'm just asking. Because we're not, like, it's not like I'm looking at this and going, I know Margaret worked for 5 hours on this particular thing and I know what her output was. So, which is fine. I don't think that we should be doing that, but I'm just saying, I'm just trying to understand why we wouldn't as a team just look at it
I
all
can
and
tell you the
say,
town accountant won't pay the bill without it being
Okay.
reflected in the minutes.
okay, that's a great reason.
And there may be, one of these may be held back.
That's great. Thank you. Those are very good reasons.
All right. So somebody want to make a motion on this disbursement request number 8?
Sure, I'll move to approve, the disbursement request number 8 for 30.
Nice second.
Okay, and so we need a roll call. Okay, Rick,
Aye.
Irwin,
Aye.
Rhonda,
Yes, aye.
Katie,
Aye.
David, are you voting on this?
I'm abstaining because
You
I
are
don't have a
not.
copy
Okay,
of the
Peter?
invoice.
And I am an I as well. Okay, so we're moving on to the 2022 Article 17 disbursement request number 1. And it's for $40,000 and change. Questions on this one?
Let me just get to it. Sorry.
Can I say, just to clarify the record, so with respect to each one of these requests, they have been vetted and reviewed by our finance department, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
Me, just me.
oh, well,
I'm the only
sorry.
one who's looked at them.
You are.
Just to
finance
clarify.
department. Okay,
But
Cecilia,
just-
on behalf
yeah.
of the finance department.
I think it's just to rehash what Celia went through process wise. She'll do the initial check, make sure everything looks right, the math, and that it's eligible for CPC. Comes to this group, make sure there's no concerns, and we'll go to the town accountant and the town manager after. So, yeah.
Rick,
Yeah, I just have a comment on all of these in general. And I'll just preface my remarks by saying that Cecilia is doing yeoman's work here to get this stuff sorted through, approved. I mean, the level of detail here, I have all the confidence in the world in the work she does, and it just makes our job a lot easier. So let me say that up front.
Thank you.
Is that a motion?
For a raise for her, sure, I don't have the authority, but what the hell?
we have questions on this disbursement request?
Is the invoice?
I think it's Article 17. Okay, so this is the larger. So this, Reg, this is an example of spending that was from the time period where it was going against the CPA funding because the ARPA was not available.
Correct, it's for January 23rd to June 23rd. Now, January 2023 to June 2023 service, like, and you'll see the time sheet
Yes.
back that up.
Okay, and so expenses like this currently being incurred, say, in February of 2024, will go against ARPA.
Correct, and everything from July 2023 onward is the same
ARPA.
answer.
Okay, but this is in that category. Okay, just confirming that. Questions or comments that people have on this request? If there are none, I would welcome a motion.
Motion to approve, the disbursement request number 1, Article 17. Town meeting 2022.
Okay, roll call, Rick,
Aye.
Irwin,
Did someone second that?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Aye.
Rhonda,
Aye.
Katie, Peter,
Aye.
and I am also aye. All right, let's move on. We have our second disbursement request from the 2022 annual meeting, annual town meeting, Article 17. And this one is for $28,435. In the bill. So. Is this just a different month?
So, if it's the 28,435, it's for July 23 to September 23, that's the one we were through. 2022, 17 to 20, Article 17 of, 2022, right?
This is disbursement request number 2 out of that.
Yeah,
All right, so that one was withdrawn. Article 17. Request to withdraw.
Oh, this one was withdrawn.
So we're on
Okay.
to Article 18, request number 1.
Okay, sorry. I thought the last one was withdrawn.
it's complicated.
It is not. Okay, I was looking at the list just in a different order.
So
All right, so. Town meeting article 18, disbursement request number 1.
Okay. 38,249.75.
This one is for the property survey. And this one, so it's a partial.
So if
on
you
this.
turn to the next page on the invoice, you'll see that yellow highlight, orange highlighted. There. Those 3 charges you see are specifically for the High Rock existing conditions property report. UCR, sometimes it's called a PCR, property condition report, and those 3 add up to $34,772.50. And then when you add the 10% markup that admin processing fee, that's how you get the 38,749.75. And that's what was charged on the disbursement request on the first page.
So all of the house doctors have a 10% admin fee.
Yes. Because they do all the management of the subcontractor. It's a standard thing, as you know, and you know, it's a reasonable thing to pay. They do the invoicing directly to them, and then they charge us and we reimburse them. The only one that they don't do directly is BH&A. That's directly to us.
I have a question.
Okay, Rick, you have a question?
Yeah, can you just, these charges, the invoices, on that appear to be in 22? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, could you just scroll back up to the first page? All the way, please. Yeah. Up here, you have disbursement request 38,000. And the date of the disbursement request is just when?
Is January 1st, 2024, I believe. If you scroll down a couple more lines there.
Okay, all right. So basically, we held off requesting for this money that was incurred in 22 until the 1st of January of this year.
Correct.
Okay. We don't have to do it for these, but on a going forward basis, particularly as we're getting into the larger expenditures on the projects, it would be helpful if, and I know this is a little bit of a change in the form, but if we have the appropriation, the balance, how much has been dispersed, if we know at some point what the percentage completion of the project is, and to give us an indication as to whether we're going to be looking to overspend or underspend on the project. Is that something you folks track?
Well, we track it in the invoice level. So it's 3 pages down. It tells you exactly what percent complete you are if you just do 2 pages down. So that tells you the percent complete information. And so to try to avoid making mistakes. We don't transcribe information over to the cover sheet that's already right there in the 2 pages down, but I guess we can do that if that helps.
Where on this, Reg, is the percent complete?
See, if you see the 3 orange highlighted items,
Yeah,
it says 50% investigation, Dietz and Company on the first one.
oh, I see, I'm sorry, it's yellowed out and I can't read it, that's okay.
Yeah, and then the second one is a sewer line scoping that we had to do to see if they collapsed in our test buildings, so that was the extra expense that kind of caused us to overrun. And then you get the 75% draft report phase there for the 17,100.
And I think if you go a little bit further, there's even additional backup.
There is, so they're in.
Okay, that's fine, as
50
long as
DVD
we're, as
backup,
long as
there's
we're
more
able to
backup.
do that, yeah, as long as we're able to
That, you know, that-
determine where, that we're starting to spend more money that maybe comes out of the contingency or whatever it is. That's all I'm trying to get at here.
Yeah, and I know before I sign off on anything being paid for the CHA, I have to know that there's budget, a contract authority for that payment, that we haven't gone over it. So the planning and development cover sheet actually does the math so that, and I have a booklet that I keep that confirms the math is correct so that I can make sure that I'm representing to my CFO that the contract or whatever approval that we have for that expenditure has not been exceeded.
And then it goes to Cheryl, who does the same thing with her staff and double checks, and there sometimes there's corrections that happen between us. And when Cheryl thinks it's absolutely, and she's accountable to our board, and then she turns it into Cecilia, who then double checks the math again. And then it gets, I guess, to this committee for a vote. So there's lots of eyes on it.
I defer to Erwin on this, but I'm pretty sure that the PBBC does something like this when they approve all of their invoices.
Yes, it's true. We ask for the level of review from project managers so that we have a sense of confidence when it comes to us that numbers have been checked out, and we also constantly track the contingencies, the percent completion, how much the contingency is left, so that we know we're not going into any spending that could put what we have available in jeopardy.
Okay, thank you.
Another question. Carol, do you approve these on your own, or does the housing authority vote to approve the invoices?
I approve them. I go over every one of them, and my bookkeeper, does a ticket drawer as well. Before we send them out, we make sure that all the numbers, I drive Margaret crazy.
Yeah, your questions are always
Because
welcome.
if I have a question about, a particular consultant and what they're getting paid, I just have to make sure that all of that adds up correctly.
But there's more to the answer to that.
Yeah. I'm
There's
sorry.
more to the answer, which is that no checks go out from the housing authority without being signed by 2 commissioners, usually the treasurer and 1 other commissioner. So Cheryl then puts it on a warrant if we're actually going to pay CHA back, and we in our next regular board meeting, we review that warrant, every item.
That's what I was looking for.
I think that was what you were looking at. And
Sorry.
then when we approve our warrant, and it's also our payroll and all our Section 8 voucher expenses and everything else. So it's, a couple hundred thousand, $300,000 worth of payments. Then the next day, we haven't gotten into the electronic things. We have a check signing thing, that 2 commissioners go in and sign all the checks that have been approved by the board the night before.
Oh, yeah.
Madam Chair, with that, I would move approval.
Second.
All right, let's do a roll call. Rick,
Aye.
Erwin,
Aye.
Rhonda? Aye. Katie? Aye. Peter?
Aye.
Aye. And David. And David. Oh, you were just recusing on one.
Just on the first day.
Okay.
He just didn't have any voice.
Okay, so moving on So we are now looking at 2023 annual town meeting article 23, disbursement request number 1. What about this one? Number
Oh,
1.
sorry.
So this is appropriate for Needham Housing Authority Seabeds Cook. Okay, so this one, we're at the 21.2%. Because we are Seabeds Cook. Okay, another one. So when we're saying federal repositioning, that's how we know this is Seabeds Cook. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you've got your calculation of 21.2% of these costs that are billable to the CPA.
Yes.
Questions? No questions? Right, I guess I would welcome a motion in that case. All right, Rick,
Aye.
Erwin,
Aye.
Rhonda,
Hi.
Katie,
Hi.
Dave,
Hi.
Peter.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so moving on to 2023 annual town meeting article 23 disbursement request number 2. Again, appropriate for NHA Seabeds Cook, disbursement at 21.2%. This looks similar. This is just a later date. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's covering the period July 23 to September 23 for Cambridge's work on that particular project.
Rick,
Aye.
Erwin,
Aye.
Rhonda? Aye. Katie?
Aye.
Dave?
Hi.
Peter?
Aye.
And aye. I think that is all of them. So we are done with that, just noting the upcoming meeting schedule.
May I
Yeah,
ask, so there are a bunch more that, and we obviously have got them in, so, and in the context of the upcoming meeting schedule, it would be great from a cash flow point of view if we could, maybe find some way before March 5th to, approve the rest of the outside the black backlog. I know that's asking a lot of the volunteer committee. I didn't realize we had this process, but it's obviously been very educational for everybody. So is there some possibility of meeting sooner than the 5th of March, just for this purpose?
We do a Zoom meeting,
Yeah, we can always meet with it.
yeah.
Maybe drive meeting.
Yeah.
I guess what deadline you're trying to get at?
Well, so there are all these ones that you're gonna get tomorrow morning, so we'll be completely caught up, except for November and December of 2023 from the CHA bills, but all the BH&A bills and everybody else's, will be completely caught up, and we can celebrate this time.
How many disbursement requests total are there?
I wasn't marking the ones that you approved already here, so, but it's how many folders do you have there?
So a total of 13 for
13.
2019.
Including today's.
13, so for each grant. So for the 20, for each award, the 2019 award, there are 13 disbursement requests. And you received 8 today and, see, because we were through. seven.
You asking how much time, for how much time?
Trying to
you
gauge,
need,
right,
right?
but-
So
How
they're
many
all
will-
done.
It's just,
They're,
I'm
they're
a
all
little
done, Peter, I'm sorry.
confused.
I just haven't, scanned them and sent them
No,
to.
I can-
I'm just trying to gauge
Yeah.
like what is.
So how many
20
are
minutes.
we
Quite a bit.
confused? You said 13, but we've already done,
You've
is-
done, yeah, today you've done,
so it's 5 more?
and that's that grant there,
So that's,
29.
Okay,
So this is only
It'll
one,
be
we're
six.
talking about, only talking about 20.
It'll be 6 more for 2019 because you
60.
withdrew number 7. So while we approved 8, we
Okay.
really only approved 7 total requests.
okay.
so I can give you the oldest number, I guess, that's probably the easiest way of doing this, so, oh no, I can't do it easily,
No, but that's 2019.
So you're talking, when you say 2019, you're talking about
The
a
original
specific
$350,000.
Yeah.
article,
and that will be pretty much exhausted.
Article 30,
Are
okay,
you talking about Article 30?
Article 30.
Well, you know, it doesn't really matter.
I'm gonna say.
We need it, we need 45 minutes from now, right?
And hours should be plenty, given
Okay.
the pace that we're working at.
That's what I was trying to get at.
Okay, well, we're now more educated on
Yeah, how,
the context and what all this means. And we would have circulated ahead of time this same
yeah,
stack up.
Can I just ask, because just thinking about, we'll need time to review and complete everything once we receive those. Because we haven't seen those, and then we'll need 48 hours to post. So realistically, if it's, is getting this approval 2 weeks sooner than you would have otherwise at the March 4th meeting.
would really help, yeah, and we have school vacation coming up too, the 3rd week, so I don't know if anybody's affected by that. So
If I-
maybe sometime next week would be great.
If I get them by tomorrow morning, I won't have them turned around to the committee until the end of the day Friday, just realistically.
Maybe we can, outside of this meeting, figure out what is feasible.
Yeah.
We can certainly
See if
count
we
them
can
up,
do
we'd
it.
rather do it in real time, yeah, but sometime next week would be great, yeah.
I think we'll need to figure out what we can do.
Just to be clear, for our warrants, for disbursements are only on Fridays. They would have to be processed by accounting on Monday. So for instance, this that we're voting on tonight, the earliest we'd be looking at a check would be the 16th of February.
Yeah, thank you for letting us know that. Another reason not to wait to the 5th of March. So, said the same cycle would apply, so, but we could sort of figure out a date outside of our public meeting if you want to move on to the rest of the agenda here, the next
Yeah, I
day.
think working on the date, we should not try to do now. It's gonna take up a lot of time and.
And we'll give you an exact count tomorrow,
I don't need an exact count, I just need the actual reimbursements in order to be able to move forward. It doesn't really matter to me how many, I just need them in front of me.
I,
This is,
Well, I
you can
think
scan them all.
yeah, they have,
All right.
that is it
You are officially given them here.
for our agenda.
Thank you.
So we have our Monday, March 4th meeting where we are going to talk about this report. Right,
Yeah, I think the hope from CPC was that TCHOC would have thoughts about how the committee's executed your charge
Yeah.
to date
Yeah.
for their March 13th meeting.
mhm,
So I think the goal is for me to get a draft memo to the committee in advance of the March 4th meeting for
mhm.
your discussion.
Okay, and then the 8th, we have the Mass Housing Partnership. And then, subsequent meetings. Continue to approve. Disbursements, et cetera. Of course, we have to see how town meeting goes in terms of the May 13th date. Okay, so I think if, I'd welcome a motion to adjourn. A motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, Rick,
Aye.
Erwin,
Aye.
Rhonda, Katie,
Aye.
Dave,
I
Peter,
All right.
And I as well. Okay, well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And so we'll definitely see each other March 4th. We will figure out what we can do
That would be great.
prior
Appreciate
to
it.
that. Great. Thank you to everyone.
That was
Thank you
very
both.
thorough.
Night.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you,